Hi, I'm Russell Rowland. I'm the host of this podcast, which is called The Song of Roland, and it's a podcast about American culture. And I've been doing film reviews on my Substack page for the last 2 years, a little more than 2 years. And I decided it was time to maybe do a video review for my latest round of films and TV shows. I usually do about 5 different either shows, films, or series. And so here we go. I'm going to start with last night. I went to see the sequel to Spinal Tap, which is called Spinal Tap 2: The End Continues. And first of all, it's kind of weird because I was so sure this was going to be so popular that the theater was going to be packed. This was the first night, I think, that it showed here. I live in Billings, Montana, and we have a really great little independent film theater here in Billings. Probably seats the biggest theater in there. There's 3 screens, and the biggest one seats probably 150 people. So I was expecting the whole thing to be full, and I got there early, and I was the only one there until the film started. There, by the time it started, there was probably 15 people there, which I didn't understand at all. I thought This Is Spinal Tap, the first film, was so huge that there would be a huge demand to see the new one, but who knows? I don't. Maybe the following for that film isn't as big as I thought it was. Anyway, I was a little nervous about seeing this because 40 years is a long time between the original and a sequel, and you just never know whether the quality's going to be the same. Thankfully, they had the same main characters, the 3 main members of Spinal Tap, this fictional rock band. I'm sure most of you are aware this is a satire of a regular rock documentary. Rob Reiner, the brilliant director who was also Meathead on the All in the Family, has made a lot of great movies. This little mock documentary that he made called This Is Spinal Tap was his first foray into that kind of genre. And thankfully, he had Christopher Guest as one of the main characters in the original film. And Christopher Guest is a very talented filmmaker of his own. He's made several mock documentaries like Waiting for Guffman and Best in Show, which is a satire on dog shows. Christopher Guest plays Nigel Tufnell, as most of you probably remember. And the film starts with the character that Rob Reiner plays in the film, who's a fake documentary filmmaker named Marty DeBerge. And it starts with him trying to track these guys down to see if they're interested in doing a reunion show. And he finds Nigel Tufnell first in this small British town, and he has a cheese and guitar shop, which is perfectly fitting for the type of humor that they display in these films. And one of the things that's amazing about these films is that a lot of it is improvised, and you can tell in these early scenes that Reiner and Guest are improvising this scene where he finds him in this cheese and guitar shop, and Nigel is explaining how he will exchange cheese for guitars or guitars for cheese, and he does it all by the weight. So if a wheel of cheese is the same weight as a guitar, he'll make an even exchange, which is hilarious. So that's the kind of humor we're talking about. So DeBerge convinces the 3 guys to get together. And of course, the other 2 are Michael McKean, who has done a lot of great work since Spinal Tap. He was in Better Call Saul. He was Saul's brother in that. And of course, he made his he made himself first known as one of the guys in Laverne and Shirley. And I can't remember if he was Squiggy or the other guy, but it doesn't matter. McKean is great as David St. Hubbins, who's the lead singer and sort of the creative force behind Spinal Tap. And it's cool because when they finally meet up, they haven't seen each other for 15 years, and you can tell there's some tension. So there's that sort of going on while they're rehearsing to put together this show. And then, of course, the third member is Derek Smalls, who is played by Harry Shearer. And Shearer has made a huge name for himself, mainly as doing a ton of the voices on The Simpsons. So he's been doing okay for himself. But he's always been sort of the third wheel in this trio, and they sort of play on that when Marty finds him. He's running a glue museum. So, of course, they make a few jokes about him being the glue in the band. And there's a very funny moment in that first meeting where he's showing Marty this little container of turtle glue. It's glue made from turtles. And I won't tell you what happens, but it's very funny. So the premise of the film, they're going to do this reunion show. They have all these rehearsals. There's a couple of new characters they bring in. And of course, that's always kind of risky when you have a known quantity. But the characters they do bring in are all really good. There's this smarmy guy who doesn't know anything about music, but he's the one that's put in charge of all the PR. And of course, he's an idiot, but they all have to put up with him. And there's also a lot of great cameos from some big names, and especially Paul McCartney, who is amazing just as being Paul McCartney. I mean, this guy has created such a great lineage for himself just by being himself. And you know, it's clear that he loves being Paul McCartney, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. And he really shows that in this film. He shows up at one of their rehearsals, and I won't tell you what happens, but it's one of the best scenes in the whole movie. So then they have the big reunion show, you know, and of course, one of the things that's cool about this group is that they actually do play. They're very good musicians. So they play three of their most famous songs for the concert, and it was good that they didn't overdo the music part of it. Was just the right amount of music. And then, of course, it climaxes with a very funny scene that's sort of a echo from the first film. So, yeah, I like this film so much better than I expected I would. I just was worried that it was going to be kind of a rehashing a lot of the old stuff. But these guys are just so good at improvising and playing off of each other that it just felt just as fresh and funny as the first film. And I'm going to give it 5 fortune cookies. I rate my films with fortune cookies because I had a very brief career as a fortune cookie writer. So that's how I measure my films. 5 fortune cookies for Spinal Tap 2. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a series called Sirens. Some of you have probably heard about it. It stars Julianne Moore. And again, I was a little skeptical of this one. I've always been a huge fan of Julianne Moore. But, you know, there's been a lot of series lately made of, like, rich couples who aren't quite what they seem. And that's getting a little tiresome. But this one has a little twist in it that's very interesting, and it makes it unique. So the story opens with this young woman, Devon DeWitt, who shows up at the compound that Julianne Moore owns with her husband. So Julianne's character is named Michaela Kell, and her husband, Peter, has some kind of huge business where he's made himself a fortune, and they have this compound that's right on the ocean, and you know, it's huge and isolated. So Devon DeWitt shows up at this compound because she has been able to determine that her sister is working for Michaela. So her sister Simone, Devon shows up. Her plan is to convince Simone to leave with her. Devon works in a falafel shop. She's obviously struggling to get by. She's in her early 30s, probably. She's also taking care of her father, who has early onset dementia, so she's got a pretty hard life. And she shows up to try to convince Simone to come home with her. And Simone is definitely not interested. She is loving this life. She is working as Michaela's assistant. She lives in this incredible house. She has a lot of responsibilities. Michaela has developed a organization that rescues birds. And so, she's got all these rich housewife friends that are, able to tell themselves that they're doing some good in the world. They're all very shallow and all that. But, the more we learn about Michaela and Devon and Simone's history, the more we understand why Simone would just love this job, because they grew up in pretty bad circumstances. They lost their mother at a young age. The two women who play the sisters, Megan Fahey, you will probably recognize from, she was one of the three blonde college friends that was in The White Lotus. And then the other girl, whose name is Millie Alcock, is an Australian actress, and I'm not familiar with her, but she was really good in this film. In this series. She plays this young, very pretty, very determined young woman who also has a lot of fragility. The more we learn about their past, the more we realize she's been pretty badly damaged by her history. The two sisters play off each other really well. Megan Fahey is amazing in this series. As this girl who's just, been forced to be very direct and scrappy and not be shy about expressing her opinion. I won't go into any more of the details about what happens, but there's just a lot of interesting twists and the turns. Kevin Bacon actually plays the husband, Peter, and he's good too. I am not a huge Kevin Bacon fan, but he's got just the right amount of charm to play this guy who's rich enough to be kind of make his own decisions and be charming and smooth. I was a little disappointed in the way it ended, but I'm just otherwise pretty happy with the way this whole series played out. This one is on Netflix if you want to find it there, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to give it 4.5 fortune cookies. The next one is also a series. This one is also on Netflix. It's called Too Much. And this one was created by Lena Dunham, who is famous for her series Girls, which I've never seen, actually. So I kind of went into this with no preconceived ideas about what to expect. The main character in this series is a young 30-something gal who works in an advertising agency. She's just started working there when they suddenly announced that they would like her to go to London and work in their London office. The main character's name is Jessica, and she's played by Stalter is the actress's name. Her last name is Stalter. The character has a lot of insecurities. But and she's just gone through a breakup, so she goes to London with this idea that she's gonna just take the time to really focus on her job and find herself. But the first night she's there, she goes out to a club and meets this musician named Felix, who is very charming and handsome and talented. and they actually hit it off just immediately and end up spending the night together that very first night. Quickly falls into this relationship which she didn't plan, and these two have such a great chemistry. The actor who plays Felix is named Sharp is his last name. I don't have the first name handy here. Megan Stalter is the actress. The guy who plays Felix was in another series that I recently saw that I really loved called The Newsreader. And he's got a lot of charm and the humor between these two. So it mostly focuses, there's not a lot that happens in this series. It's very character driven, but these two enjoy each other's company so much that they just end up talking late into the night. And it doesn't take long before Jessica is in danger of losing her job because she's always so tired when she shows up to work because she's been up talking and having sex with Felix all night. And I haven't finished this series, so my review is kind of based on just what I've seen so far, which is about 5 episodes. But I'm going to give this one 4 fortune cookies. It's a very charming, funny series with a little bit of a twist that I won't tell you any more about. The next one is The Righteous Gemstones, and this is another satire. This is a satire on the evangelical industry of these big, huge churches. It was created by a guy named Danny McBride, and some of you might know who he is. He's developed a few series where he usually plays the same kind of like really cocky, overconfident guy who thinks way more of himself than anybody else thinks of him. The first one he made was called Eastbound and Down, and he played a former minor league baseball player in that series who owns a bunch of car dealerships. And again, he's just this guy who thinks way more of himself than he should. So in this series, he plays the middle of 3 generations of evangelical preachers who have this huge church. The father is played by John Goodman, who's perfect for the role. He's just this big, controlling. He feels so sorry for himself if things don't go his way that he just lays these guilt trips all over people all the time to get his way. So part of the premise of this series is that the Gemstones, that's their actual name, are going to take over. They're going to build this huge church in this part of the state where there's a lot of smaller churches. And of course, the preachers of these smaller churches aren't happy about it. So they come to talk to them about it. And the Gemstones are like, fuck you guys. We're going to do it no matter what. So you might as well just get used to it. Dermot Mulroney, who's one of my favorite character actors, who's always just so solid, plays one of the minor church preachers who's fighting this thing. And of course, it just doesn't look like there's any way they're going to be able to keep these guys from coming in and building this huge thing, but we just don't know. So then there's also a plot going on where these bumbling, sort of inept, this little group of people, they have a video of Jesse, the son, Danny McBride's character. They have a video of him partying with some prostitutes at one of their, out-of-town excursions. So they send a copy of this tape to Jesse, telling him that they're going to bribe him or, going to expose him if he doesn't pay him $1 million. So Jesse's freaking out about all that. And eventually that becomes a huge part of what's the conflict that keeps this series going. There's also an incredible character in this series played by Edie Patterson. She plays Judy Gemstone, the only girl in the family. And she's just so funny in this series. She's one of these characters where, this is a very male-dominated family and industry. So, everything that she tries to do, they just shoot her down. They barely listen to her. And she just does an amazing job of trying to walk the fine line between, staying in their good graces, but also expressing she's really determined to make something of her life different. She doesn't want to continue just working for these people. She's really great. And there's a hilarious scene where John Goodman's wife, who's played by, I can't think of the actress's name, but she's so good at playing like the perfect preacher's wife who's, always just supporting her man and being very outwardly gracious and everything. And there's a moment where Judy's trying to voice her displeasure about, the fact that they don't treat women very well. And John Goodman's wife starts to argue with her, and then she stops herself and asks John Goodman if it's okay if she speaks. So she's trying to make the point that they don't treat women like shit, but she just proves it by asking for permission to speak. There's a lot of that type of humor in this series. And of course, the most brilliant part about it is that whenever they come up against any kind of conflict or they're trying to make decisions, they don't have their decision-making process has nothing to do with religion or spirituality. It's all about money. So it's a very, spot-on satire about the hypocrisy of these organizations. Really well done. I'm going to give that a 5 fortune cookie rating. The last one I'm going to talk about, and it's another series. It's actually one that just came out on Peacock. It's called The Paper. And I'm not sure what they were thinking when they decided to put this series out there. It's basically a complete redoing of The Office. And I'm a big fan of The Office, but basically what they've done, it's the same people that created The Office. They have the same set. They have the company that The Office was based on has shut down. And this series is about the new company that's moved into the same space. So it's the exact same type of humor with a completely different cast of characters. I think there's one guy that was in The Office who's in this one. But it's basically the same show, but with just completely different people. And I mean, I only probably watched about 15 minutes of it because I was like, if I'm going to watch this kind of show, I'm going to watch The Office. Steve Carell, nobody can top him. The guy that plays the main character is Donnell Gleeson, who's Brendan Gleeson's son. And he's an actor that I really admire. I like him in almost everything I've seen him in. But this, it has nothing to do with him, but this series just didn't interest me at all. So I'm going to give that 1 fortune cookie. Maybe I'll go back and give it another try sometime, but on first glance, it just didn't do it for me. So there you go. Check out these films and series if you want. Thanks for listening. It's a Saturday here in Billings, Montana. Beautiful day. And I hope you're having a good weekend. Thanks again. And join me again next time. I'll be doing I do a lot of interviews with people that are doing interesting things in the cultural world in America. So I hope you'll tune in for some of those too. Thanks a lot. Russell Rowland, The Song of Roland.